Welcome to Tell Us a Story, the podcast dedicated to the stories that connect us through our shared life experiences, as well as the stories that reveal the sometimes stark differences. Only by truly listening to one another can we bridge the gaps that divide us, fostering empathy, respect, and kindness with one another. In this episode, Jocelyn Swigger, professor of music at Gettysburg College and concert pianist, shares how her discovery of the composer Agnes Tyrrell led her to finding her life's work in her 50s. Her story reminds us to always be ready for new opportunities in life. Now let's listen as Jocelyn tells us a story.
I'm Jocelyn Swigger. I'm piano professor at Gettysburg College, Centerman Conservatory. I also teach piano at Interlochen Arts Camp. So as you can tell from that, I am a concert pianist and a piano teacher. I also am very proud to serve as judge of elections in my local precinct, and I encourage everybody to vote in every local election. I want to tell you about a project that I'm doing that I'm really, really excited about. And I think that it is my life's purpose. And I found it in my 50s. And it really kind of showed up in my life and maybe in the world at exactly the right time. And there's something really exciting to me about that. I am a concert pianist and a music professor. And I have spent my life playing piano, teaching piano, thinking about piano, loving music and teaching music and thinking about music. When I was a little girl, a young piano student in the 1970s, it never, ever, ever crossed my mind that a woman could be a composer. To the point where it wasn't even something that I was mad about that women couldn't be composers, the way I was mad about lots of other things that women couldn't do. But it just never even seemed like a possibility that a woman could be a composer. When I was a little older in college, I took a class on women in music and heard a lot of really depressing stories about composers, famous composers, sisters and wives, like poor Nannerl Mozart, who was a prodigy and performed all over Europe. And then when she turned 15, it was no longer proper for a young lady to be on the stage, and so she had to be stuck at home. And Fanny Mendelssohn, who wasn't allowed to take the same kinds of composition lessons that her brother Felix could take, and was even told music can never be more than an ornament for you. And then people like Clara Schumann, who got really wonderful, rigorous piano training and was one of the best and most well-known pianists in Europe, but mostly championed music of Franz Liszt and Robert Schumann, although she did write some music herself. Anyway, so you hear all these depressing stories about women who were not allowed to be composers. So I have always thought it would be nice to find music that I really, really love by women composers. I did look for I remember when I was in college going through the stacks in the library, and there were a few people there. There was Lily Boulanger, who wrote wonderful music, but at the time it was a little bit more than I could handle because it's quite difficult and complicated. There were a few, but I couldn't find anybody that I really, really loved. So I have spent most of my life pretty happily playing music by the famous dead guys. I love the music by the famous dead guys. I have a whole bookshelf here of music by the famous dead guys. Their music has brought me incredible joy and solace and meaning in my life. And then probably about 7 years ago, when I was in the aftermath of a very, very big project that I did, which was learning all the Chopin etudes and performing them and recording them. There are 27. They are incredibly difficult. That was a project that I thought would take 2 years. It took 7. I described it as my personal Everest, and I'm proud of that project. And at the time, I really thought this is the most important artistic thing I'm ever going to do. I just couldn't imagine that there was something else that I would do that would be more important. And now I know that I actually only did that project so that I could do this project that I'm doing now. Anyway, after I did the Chopin Etudes, I really went through a pretty long phase of not wanting to play hard music. Like, I just kind of wanted to have things be a little easier, play things that were a little simpler. And I ended up making an album with my friend and colleague, the wonderful soprano Susan Hohmiller, of music by women composers. And that was the perfect project for that moment because, well, partly, honestly, because a lot of the pieces weren't that hard, and I really needed that at that point. But also because we had this big anthology of songs, meaning not just like a piece of music, but like actually for somebody to sing, songs by women composers. And we went through and we had a color-coded Post-it note system. And we said, well, okay, if we sort of like it, we'll give it like a yellow. And if we really, really like it, we'll give it a green. And we'll see how many we got. And we ended up only having the ones that we liked the most. And our rubric was really, would we be excited about this song if it were by one of the famous dead guys? And it was really cool to go through this anthology and come up with an album's worth of things that, like, yeah, I would be excited by this song if it were by Schubert. Let's record it. So that's a little bit of setting the stage. And then another thing that was happening around that time is, of course, the Me Too era was happening. This is around like 2018, 2019. And so I was hearing lots of stories from many people that I love and thinking about my own stories and just thinking, boy, it sure would be nice to be playing music by women right now. So that moment made me think, let me look again for women composers and just sort of see what's out there. And fortunately, I was feeling like I was up for a little bit of a challenge, which I had not been feeling immediately after the Chopin Etudes at all. So one day I was standing in the library at Interlochen Arts Camp, where I teach in the summers, and I have this really clear memory of looking at I thought I'll just check out the reference section, the music reference section, and see what's here. And they had the Norton Grove Dictionary of Women Composers, which, by the way, like existed in 1980. Like, it's not like I couldn't have found that when I was in college, but I didn't find it when I was in college. Anyway, so I was looking through and I came to this entry that said Agnes Tyrrell wrote a set of concert etudes. An etude is a piece that demands and develops a specific virtuoso technique. Tyrrell wrote a set of concert etudes that Franz Liszt suggested some fingerings for. Franz Liszt was the most famous pianist in the 19th century. Like, he was the only person more famous than Clara Schumann for the piano. And he didn't have to practice anything. So this entry said that he had praised these pieces and had also suggested some fingerings, meaning what finger goes on what key. And I thought, well, for Liszt to engage with this music enough that he had an opinion about what finger goes on what key means that this is probably pretty interesting piano writing. Now, had I come across that earlier, I would have thought, oh God, this means this is really hard piano music. I am not touching this with a 10-foot pole. Maybe even in college, I would have thought that. But at this moment, when I found it in I'm not sure if it was 2018 or 2019 in the summer. But anyway, I thought, oh, that's interesting. Let me see what I can find out about her. So I started Googling Agnes Tyrrell every once in a while, and there was nothing, and there was nothing. And then a really wonderful edition of some of her piano music came out by Kira Stekove, who is a Leipzig pianist. And I have since met her, spent a wonderful afternoon together, and she's delightful. But this really, really beautiful edition. And I played through the pieces, and I just kept swearing because the music was so good. I really, really loved it. It was exactly to my taste. And so really, since then, that was in March of 22 that I first played through Agnes Tyrrell's music. And I wrote it in my little journal. Like, I think I'm really excited about this composer. things that's really amazing about being a pianist is that I get to spend my life in conversation with geniuses. And every time I practice somebody's piece, I really am having a wonderful, intimate conversation with them, is how I think of it. And because I'm a pianist, I get to play music by the very, very, very best composers because everybody wrote for us, right? Like the poor, poor flugelhorn players. Like, what do? They don't have an entire bookshelf of music that Bach wrote for them and Beethoven wrote for them and Mozart wrote for them and Brahms wrote for them. Like you can go through the whole list of the great, great composers, and we're so lucky because they all wrote for us. So what that means is that I really have a great deal of expertise in playing music by geniuses. I would say that for me, what makes a piece really, really absolutely top level is that it still is interesting for me to practice after I've been practicing it for 6 months. There are many pieces that are really nice to hear the first time and fun to practice for about a week. And then after that, you feel like, okay, well, I sort of know what the game is here, and I'm not, like, I'll do it, but I'm not necessarily that interested. But the really, really great pieces by the really, really, really great composers, you never stop making discoveries about them. It's just incredible. For example, with the Beethoven sonatas, which I've been playing and teaching my whole life, I still make discoveries about those pieces. And sometimes it's a very small discovery, but like, oh, look at this little thing that's like this other little thing. And Agnes's music is absolutely at that level. It's never boring to me. For one thing, she absolutely mastered her craft. She likes to play with form in the way that I like to think about form. What I mean by form is the shape that music has, the structure of it. So if you think about a song with a verse and a chorus and a refrain, and maybe there's a bridge, and maybe there's an intro, and then maybe that can happen in various ways. You can have a song where they just do the same lyrics over and over and over again, and I tend to find that less interesting. So but you can think about like, oh, here is a piece that is following this form or playing with the form. And she likes to play with the form a bit. She also, for me, really, really walks the line between following the rules enough that you know what to expect. And so you can think, well, what do I think is going to happen? It's probably going to be this, in a way that you can't if there's no sense of following the rules at all. But then she also has a lot of surprises. So there's a lot of moments of, I think I know what's going to happen. Oh, it was that. Instead of, I think I know what's going to happen. Yeah, I did it. So there's a lot of discovery. There's also a lot of passion and feeling and humor and mirth and joy. And I've been working on some of her songs recently, meaning to be sung, and there's some sadness too. It really is just this whole color palette of human emotions written by somebody who was amazing at playing the piano and just making the piano tell all these stories. My main artistic pursuit is Agnes Tyrrell, and I think that her music is going to be my main project for the rest of my life, and I'm really sincere about that. My ultimate goal for Agnes Tyrrell is when it's her bicentennial in 2046, I want there to be concerts celebrating her music all over the world. And I want those concerts to be shows that I did not organize. So the plan is to get her music published. I'm going to record and play her music, but I also want to get other people performing and playing her music. I've been talking with a couple people about including some of her pieces in some anthologies that will be coming out. I really want to be playing Agnes and inspiring other people to play Agnes's music. So here I am in my 50s, and it's not like I've been scrambling my whole life. Like, I have been teaching and playing and directed and doing lots of things, but this project is really what I think I was put here to do. So in September, it's currently July, but in September, I'm going to be playing the official world premiere of those 12 etudes. And then I'm touring them, and then I'm going to record them next summer. I'm editing them for a publisher in Germany, so they should be coming out next year. I'm going to be presenting on them at the National Piano Teachers Conference in March. I got to go to Berlin with my wonderful student assistant, Riley Dunbar, this past March to hear an all-women orchestra play Agnes's Overture that Riley and I put together the score and parts for, and that was an incredibly moving thing. I have visited the archive multiple times and taken thousands of photographs. They've been incredibly generous. The archive, by the way, is in the Czech Republic, in Brno, which is about halfway between Prague and Vienna. And so I have this whole new direction and obsession that could really easily have passed me by if I had found it 5 years earlier or 20 years earlier. And also, if I, let's say that I had found that entry in the 90s and had gotten myself over to the archive, it's really nice to have an iPhone in the archive because it's so easy to take the photos. You just turn the page, take a photo, turn the page, take the photo. And it also is really easy to read from the manuscripts from an iPad because it's very easy to make it bigger, make it smaller. I can mark all over it without feeling bad that I'm messing up precious copies or manuscripts or anything. So the technology is incredibly helpful for this project. I certainly wouldn't have been able to do this project before this. I think part of the reason that the music has been silent for so long is that the music was in the archive. You could look at it and see, oh, this is hard, but you couldn't necessarily look at it and see, oh, this is good. And so somebody could very easily have looked at it and thought, well, I don't know if this is good or not. I'm not going to make the effort of taking a photograph, developing it, looking at it, or hand transcribing it. So being able to just waltz in with my phone, take a photo, put it on my iPad, and immediately read it is incredible. I'm not the only person who's working on Agnes. My assistant, Riley Dunbar, is also working on her, and Kirsch Czekove, the Leipzig pianist who did this wonderful book, also has been doing some work on Agnes. And there is a dissertation about Agnes from 2011, and I got to meet with the woman who wrote that. Her name's Martina Szulmajsterova, and she so kindly gave me a PDF of her dissertation, which is in Czech. I cannot read Czech, but Google Translate can look at the PDF and translate it good enough that I can have a sense of what it says. So that's another way that the technology is ending up being incredibly helpful. Yeah, it's just everything has kind of landed in the exactly perfect time for me. There's the true, like the scientifically true way that I found Agnes, which is that I was standing in the library and opened up the book and saw the entry, and then for some reason thought to Google her until I got the book. And then there is the artistically true reason, which I don't scientifically believe, but artistically I 100% believe, which is that my mother died in 2010 and was my biggest fan and loved music and was a huge part of me being a musician, drove me to 1 trillion music lessons and all of that. My mother was the most social, extrovert, meet somebody and send them Christmas cards for 25 years person. And she spoke lots of different languages and loved meeting people and speaking different languages to them. And my mother believed that her ancestors were looking out for her. So sometimes she would say a little prayer, like to come on, Betty, can you help me out with this situation? So I don't know if I believe that my ancestors are looking out for me, but I know that that's what my mother believed. So the artistically true thing is that my mom 100% ran into Agnes and got her into one of these conversations, because my mom is so good at getting people to talk to her, and said, oh, well, you have to meet my daughter, because my daughter is a pianist and she'll get people playing your music.
Thank you, Jocelyn, for sharing your story and Agnes Tyrrell with us today. For more information about Jocelyn or Agnes, please see the show notes, where you will also find more information about this podcast. Or visit us at tellasastory.info to listen to all our episodes. If you like this story, please share with a friend.